Vice Chair of the Abraham Lincoln Bicentennial Foundation, Vernon Burton. Vernon is currently not only the Vice Chair of the Foundation, but he is President of the Southern Historical Association. He teaches at Clemson University, Professor of History, and Director of the Clemson Cyber Institute. From 2008 to 2010, he was Burroughs Distinguished Professor of Southern History and Culture at Coastal Carolina University. He was the founding director of the Institute for Computing in Humanities, Arts, and Social Science at the University of Illinois, where he is Emeritus University Distinguished Teacher, Scholar, and Professor of History, American Studies, and Sociology. At the university, he chairs the Institute Advisory Board and is also a senior research scientist and Associate Director of Humanities and Social Sciences at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. His books include one that most of us have, and the rest of you need to have, and that is The Age of Lincoln, which won the Chicago Tribune Heartland Literary Award for nonfiction and was selected for Book of the Month Club, History Book Club, and Military Book Club. So I'd like to, again, to express our appreciation to the Foundation for their support to this event, and welcome Professor Vernon Burton.
Thank you very, very much. It's certainly an honor to be here, and we of the Abraham Lincoln Bicentennial Foundation, whose mission is to support events, important events like you're doing, to bring to the general public, to others, recognition of Abraham Lincoln, the contributions or the spirit of Abraham Lincoln. As Lincoln knew, life is full of serendipity, and I find it ironic that a week ago I was in this very courthouse testifying as an expert witness against the South Carolina voter ID law. In fact, a constitutional issue, I believe, because I'm pretty sure, however, that is going to be decided in the Texas case. It will end up in the Supreme Court. It's part of the issues I would argue that the legacy of the Age of Lincoln. When these attorneys call me to try to get me to help out old friends, they say, well, Vernon, you've left, I see, the land of Lincoln, and you're now where? Clemson University? Now, Clemson is built on the home of what person? That's John C. Calhoun, of course, who is the politician who introduced the pro-slavery argument about 1836 or 37 on the Senate floor that would lead people like Abraham Lincoln to get involved in the issues of slavery. As long as slavery was seen as a necessary evil, people could live with it. But when Calhoun and others began to argue that no, it was not an evil, it was in fact the best possible organization of society, it brought out people like Lincoln, who ironically, if you believe his law partner Herndon, Lincoln studied Calhoun's writings to become an effective writer. Then I was asked, now, who founded Clemson University? And I said, well, that's Pitchfork Ben Tillman. If you know anything about history, Pitchfork Ben Tillman is almost a prototype of the original Southern racist demagogue who used race to motivate voters to actually vote against their own interest, and it becomes sort of the stereotype that we associate with the worst aspect of whites in the civil rights movement. And then they said, I noticed I called you in your office, and your office is in where? The Strom Thurmond Institute? Have you gone to the dark side? But these issues are important, and I'm so glad, and I want to bring the greetings of the foundation, and that we're happy, some of us, to be here and have some of our members participate, and we encourage you to continue to do the wonderful things that you are doing. You're dealing with the most important questions we as citizens or historians, we hope they aren't mutually exclusive, can struggle with. Karen asked me to spend a few minutes to try to say a few things, so I thought about them last night and this morning. When I'm looking at Lincoln and the Constitution, I like to remember what my friend Phil Paladin and Brian Dirks, dissertation advisor, explained, I think, so eloquently. And one has to understand, I think, that Lincoln was an attorney and his legal background in Illinois influenced his interpretation of the Constitution and the times. And I think that's critical as you go through the day to think about it. And I recommend Phil Paladin's wonderful works to you. When I was writing The Age of Lincoln, I was interested in Lincoln's legacy. And an answer to a question that I'll rephrase from one of Bill Clinton's, or President Bill Clinton's, more infamous lines. Rather than worrying about what the meaning of the word is, I was interested in what the meaning of us, that is the U.S., is. I think that Lincoln and the Constitution is about us, who we are. When he was the editor of Newsweek, John Meekum argued that, quote, Americans value individual freedom and free or largely free enterprise. The foundational documents are the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Now, I don't think Meekum meant this. This is my interpretation on it. I think without acknowledging, he's explaining, in fact, the most important influences on Lincoln also. And while we'll always need to consider Lincoln when we talk about the Constitution of the United States. Of course, 1862, we remember that this is the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation 150 years ago. And I think, though, that this conference is getting at the essence of that and everything else about the legacy of Lincoln. Last night in the Soldiers' Home, I noticed a quotation that was up on the wall to remind me that Lincoln believed the Emancipation Proclamation was, quote, the central act of my administration and the great event of the 19th century. And that quote went on to say something that if he would be remembered at all, he would be remembered for the Emancipation Proclamation. But I believe instead, it was actually Lincoln's understanding of liberty and the Constitution that became his greatest legacy, and the greatest legacy of what I call the Age of Lincoln. I think if you tell, or at least told as a story of freedoms and liberty rather than slaves' emancipation in the 19th century, the Civil War Reconstruction era makes greater sense. Now let me explain, because certainly emancipation is important. I'm not trying to denigrate the importance of Lincoln and emancipation, but if you take emancipation, this gets back, in fact, to the issue I was trying to explain with three judges. I started about the Saturday. The irony is that I was here arguing three judges, and now I'm substituting for a judge. To me, that's one of those ironies of life that Lincoln loved so much there. But as I was trying to, in fact, explain to the judge, or the three-judge court panel, if you see where emancipation fits, that is, if you take total unfreedom and total freedom and make it a continuum, without a meaningful vote, where does that put you? Because it says a meaningful vote that has defined citizenship both in the Age of Lincoln and today. So to pull those things together, I think, in an important way. It is something, of course, that becomes guaranteed with the 15th Amendment and then to be enforced with the 1965 Voting Rights Act. I really believe this meaningful votes define citizenship and whether one is part of a democracy then and today. Well, Lincoln revolutionized personal freedom in the United States by assuring that it was protected by law. Basically, I like to argue that Lincoln took what he saw, and I believe is our mission statement, the Declaration of Independence, is a document he dearly loved, and he placed it into the Constitution of the United States, our rule book, a document he revered, and you'll hear today about how he had to struggle with it to maintain the country that provided this rule of law that becomes an envy of the world. Part of the legacy of Lincoln, especially his new birth of freedom, involves a redefinition of the role of government in securing liberty. Prior to those Civil War amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th, of course, the 14th and 15th, after Lincoln's death, we the people wanted freedom from government. The Bill of Rights was protection from federal abridgment. The new amendment stated that Congress shall have the power to enforce certain rights of citizenship, such as the right to vote. Lincoln institutionalized positive liberty. As long as Americans are interested in liberty and freedom, they'll want to know more about Abraham Lincoln and our Constitution. Lincoln often spoke about the differences between two antagonistic groups who declare for liberty. Some, he said, used the word liberty to mean that each man could do as he pleases with himself and the product of his labor. Others held the word liberty to mean for some men to do as they please with other men and the product of other men's labor. He profited a parable to nail the point. The shepherd drives the wolf from the sheep's throat, he said, for which the sheep thanks the shepherd as a liberator, while the wolf denounces him for the same act as the destroyer of liberty, especially as the sheep is a black one. Now, Lincoln's legacy continues to reverberate in strange and interesting ways. Karen, I'm a little bit shorter than you asked me to go on, but let me just throw in something for people to ponder here. The second inaugural, Lincoln's, I think most of us agree, greatest speech, or at least one of his two greatest speeches, he argued that God gave this war because we as a people did not do away with the evil of slavery. He gave it to North and South alike, he said. He saw it as our sin. So I just looked at the program and noticed that you're covering a lot of areas, but as you listen to these speakers, here's one I'd like for you to ponder then. How then does Lincoln's view of God affect his reading of the Constitution? We know that Lincoln knew his scriptures. At the soldiers' home last night, there was his King James Bible, which so many writers wrote about when they came to the soldiers' home, that Lincoln had the Bible there marked and different things, studied it as he's trying to come to an understanding or a meaning of this war that took so many lives. And I want to leave you with one of the verses from James 1:25. But the man who looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues to do this, not forgetting what he has heard, but doing it, he will be blessed in what he does. I think you might want to think about that, something we don't usually deal with when we talk about Lincoln, and how this would influence his understanding of the Constitution. A little bit shorter than you wanted, Karen. Is that okay? I can go on and on, as you know, but I'd rather leave it there. Thank you.